Welcome back to the Fern House project. I hope you all have been getting outside, enjoying Mother Nature a little bit. I have, and today I'm back outside. I am going to make that grapevine wreath I talked about a couple episodes ago when I tore all that grapevine out of my building site area. So I'm going to load up my wheelbarrow here, soak the grapevine in water for a couple hours, and then come back and get creative and have a good time seeing if I can figure out how to make a wreath. Now, while my wheelbarrow was filling up and the hose was leaking and splashing, this little khaki Campbell duck that randomly showed up to my backyard a couple weeks ago got super excited and really wanted to get in on the fun too. So I got out his pan for water. I really don't have anything better to offer a duck, and I have no intention of putting a baby pool out and having my kids swim with the duck. Ugh. So this is what he gets, a pan of water. But he really seems happy about it, and he's chose to stay with us, so far so good. Now I'm a proud owner of a duck. So my sister told me that ducks symbolize getting things done. When a duck shows up in your life, it's a reminder that you need to get stuff done. So anyhow, maybe this is divine intervention for my task list. Not sure. Full disclaimer here. One, I don't know anything about making a grapevine wreath. This creative project is pretty loosely based around my very limited knowledge of basket weaving and some of what I've read in Little House on the Prairie. So those are some pretty fantastic resources I'm working with, right? Two, I did not make the wreath the day I started soaking the grapevine. I intended to soak the grapevine for 2 or 3 hours and then attempting to make this wreath. Instead, it soaked for like 2 or 3 days during torrential downpours. But the grapevine is very well saturated at this point, and I'm just gathering up some wire here. I'm not sure if I'm going to need that to keep my project together as I make it, but we will find out very directly. I had this random piece of concrete laying around left over from a project we did a little while ago. So I had placed it on top of the grapevine to submerge it under the water and soak it completely. Yep, she's soaked. So there has been no end to unraveling the mess of this grapevine from the moment I got into it down in the woods. But when I finally got down to the piece I wanted to start with, it was already in a circular shape, and I just had to twist the grapevine around itself a little bit more to secure it in place, and then I just began adding to that frame, twisting and coiling the pieces around themselves. It turns out we didn't need to use the wire at all, and I was really surprised by this, but I simply cut sections that were fairly straight from the grapevine tangles, and I wrapped them around this frame I was creating and tucked in the ends, and then found another piece and wrapped and tucked and wrapped and tucked. So it was a pretty smooth process once I got it going. I love doing things from scratch, whether it's in the kitchen or whether it's just a creative project or a practical project or growing something from the garden. And the reason I like doing that is because when we do things from the very beginning of a process and see it through to the end, it makes us ask questions that otherwise you would never be prompted to ask. And when you start asking questions, you begin diving deep and you expand your mind and your awareness, your appreciation, and sometimes it just leaves you wondering, who is doing this job if I'm not doing it, right? Who's making this grapevine wreath if I'm not actually harvesting it from my woods myself? I'm also often a one and done kind of girl. So this may be the only grapevine wreath I ever make. Maybe not, maybe I'll do it some more. I'm kind of thinking that it would be kind of fun for Christmas gifts and things like that. But yeah, get your hands in, figure it out once, see what it makes you think about, and then move on. There's other adventures to be had. Now, in my pile of grapevine, I had one piece of something else, and that something else is actually bittersweet, which is another type of vining plant that we have growing wild here in our woods. And I wanted to incorporate this piece in because I thought it was really pretty when I had cut it. But it just didn't seem like it was supposed to be part of the grapevine wreath. So here I am doing a really simple version of what I just did with the grapevine, and I'm just wrapping that bittersweet around itself over and over so that it begins to create a frame, be its own structure. And I'm making a wreath out of just the bittersweet. There we go. 2 wreaths completed, no wire needed. They just gotta dry now. I'm pretty excited about them. Very happy with the way these projects turned out. Oh my gosh. It is such a stormy day out here. We have been running in between thunderstorms all day, and it has gone on all week. My grass is so long and it needs mowed, but it doesn't matter because it's not happening. It's just going to keep on raining. So before the next one can hit me, I'm running out here and I am grabbing a little garage project I can do for the Fern House. She's looking a little ferocious. It's blue over there. Oh yeah. I better get this thing in the garage. So here we have it, a 40-gallon spraying tank from Tractor Supply that we purchased several years ago. 2 of them for less than the price of 1 because they were supposed to have defective pumps. But my husband's pretty handy, and he looked them over and quickly figured out that he could fix what they said was wrong with them. His intention had been that I could use this tank to water my gardens. There's like a hose with a sprayer nozzle off the one side, and it can be easily hooked behind a 4-wheeler to be towed around. However, I've never used it for anything. No chemicals, no water, nothing has gone in this tank, which is perfect because now I need to figure out an off-grid system for water for the Fern House, and we think that this tank might be a very helpful solution for what we're about to create. Today, my goal is to get these extra spraying attachments and apparatuses off of this tank. We're not going to need any of that for our off-grid water setup. And in fact, I need to get the tank itself off of the little trailer cart that it's on so that I can paint it. And a lot of this stuff is going to be in the way of getting the tank off. So it's another puzzle, this time not grapevine, but it is definitely a recurring theme for me. All right, so here's the thing. Anytime you decide to tear something apart, all of a sudden you're figuring out how in the world you get to the end of it. It's a puzzle, right? So I started out seeing that this has to be pulled through to the back, but yet this fitting won't fit through there. So I need to take this off. Then I realized this entire spraying apparatus can come undone from here, but there's not enough clearance to back it off. Oh my golly. So maybe I'll just detach it from right here. Maybe that's the better way to go about this. We'll see. I really am thankful for the time I've spent in the garage with my dad as a kid. It has taught me a lot of things that have absolutely transferred to adult life for me. I've learned about tools, how to use them, and how to have some common sense approach to projects. Although my husband's common sense and mechanical skills far exceed mine, I do know enough to get myself into trouble periodically and have a lot of fun doing it. My husband says I excel at tearing things apart, and it's kind of true, but it is one way to figure out how things work and how they go back together. I won't lie, it is pretty nice having my husband's toolbox handy for projects that I decide to tear into at random. He worked as a mechanic for over 15 years, and he has been turning wrenches long before that, even when he was a kid. So his collection of tools is pretty extensive, and it gives me plenty to work with when I decide I want to get a little grease under my nails. Finally, the moment I've been waiting for, getting these brackets off and finally taking the tank off the small trailer itself. As soon as I can do that, I can move on to step 2 of my project. I am excited I've gotten this far. I've spent a bit of time on YouTube getting ideas from other folks on how to create off-grid water systems, and the most basic thing I need is a tank that can serve as both storage and transportation, and that's exactly what this 40-gallon tank will be. So a lot of this I'm just thinking it through as I go. Again, Rick gave me the ideas for it, and now I'm just kind of seeing how far I can go with it before I need to go back and get more assistance from him. So what I'm looking at is the bottom of the tank here, and I see I have 2 outlets, and I'm thinking this will come in handy for me when I need to actually drain this tank out in between. Now the one outlet is coming up in here and going to the pump, which then goes to this hose. That hose, I tried to salvage the end on it, and I'm thinking we will ultimately be connecting that into the water line that goes down to the Fern House. So I'm going to preserve that as much as I can for right now until I see exactly how we're going to connect this into the Fern House. The second one here, this part here just comes out. It had gone to the sprayer attachment. I am going to clamp this off and use this as a drain for a total system drain in between my guest, although I want to make sure that I can completely close it off so that there's no way I can get material going back into the water source. Now, so here's the plan in a nutshell. This tank, this 40-gallon tank, is going to supply the non-drinking water for guests at the Fern House. It is going to sit above the cabin on a trail, which is only a short distance away, but significantly higher than where the building site is. So a water line will be run from this tank down to the Fern House, so gravity will be in our favor. We can also use a 12-volt pump that is attached to this tank to assist with water pressure. I think it's like a 60 psi pump, but we'll get more into that setup later. The trail that this will sit along is very easy for me to access, and I can access it without really disturbing the guests in the Fern House as well, should they need a refreshed water supply while they're staying there. So I can easily take the ATV down, hook it up to this little trailer, and bring the tank back up to my house to be refilled or refreshed in between guests or during the guest stay. I wanted to make sure that I had the shower set up and arrangement inside the cabin. I just felt like it was an added level of comfort for folks, especially if they want to venture in having a real outdoor experience, but maybe you don't feel comfortable with all the aspects of camping. So this tank is going to supply the water for that indoor shower. Oh, good old Rust-Oleum. We always have a stash of black Rust-Oleum spray paint around our house. You can use it on everything and anything, and there's just so many types. It's like my version of duct tape. I think black spray paint would be more important in my life than duct tape. I'm taking the time to paint this tank black for two reasons. One, a tank that it is either green or black is going to reduce the chance of algae growth and even bacterial growth over time. Although I don't really foresee that being a problem. This is not a several thousand gallon tank on a homestead. This is a small tank that's going to be exchanged out frequently and cleaned. However, I still think it's a good idea to do. Also, the black coating is going to help it absorb some heat from the sun, so it's not going to be sitting in a particularly sunny area, but what sun exposure it does have will allow the water inside to heat some, and that'll just offload a little of the extra work for the water heater on the inside of the cabin. Look at that tank. I mean, does that not just look fantastic? It is almost like a new car. See, I told you, black spray paint is the thing to have on hand. It fixes everything. I enjoy hot beverages, and in part, I like sipping a cup of tea just because it helps me be a little bit more mindful and in the moment. I don't know, it just does. So anyhow, sometimes I like to end a project with a cup of hot tea, and it just feels like a good way to think about what you've done, be thankful for what's been accomplished, and clear your mind for whatever is next. For this process, next is putting it back together, minus the parts I don't want any longer. before I can tow the water tank down to its resting spot temporarily, I need to unload the side by side. The side by side has plywood that was given to me this week. Actually gifted to me. I mean, that is so exciting when you consider the price of plywood. So it's a few sheets, and I am going to store it here in my garage until I'm ready to use it on my project. But man, I am so thankful for the people that have, elected to give me building supplies that they have in surplus or leftover towards this project. And I feel like it absolutely adds to the energy of what we're doing here. And I am really thankful that so much of the Fern House and even the cabin I co-host now is just a never-ending process of giving and receiving. So it's a really beautiful thing to witness. Now I can go ahead and hook my little water tank trailer onto the side-by-side and get it moved. That lag bolt thing that I just stuck in there was a leftover from our kids' swing set when we tore it down the other year. I saved the hardware from it. So see, that's what happens when you're homesteadish. You save these things because you never know when you're going to use them again. This week I've given a lot of thought to pacing myself with this project, little bits and pieces at a time. I have another 7 weeks till my framing lumber is ready anyhow. So it'll all come together. I don't have to make it all happen this week. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you are, please like and subscribe, or go ahead and comment below so that we can connect and continue the conversation.